Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Monday, March 20th. So starting off the week, and overall, it kind of felt like, especially in the afternoon, a little bit of a sleepy Monday after all those headlines. And I think it's to kind of just start there. I think it's a good lesson, right, in terms of, if you happen to bring up Twitter this weekend, a lot of macro stuff out, analysis, but that really doesn't help kind of, in my opinion, translate into helping you trade, right? I mean, there's a lot of headlines, and sure, it's a very interesting story what happened with Credit Suisse and UBS, and that story will come up again and again, and we don't know how UBS is going to be faring with all of this, but at the end of the day, it's really kind of gets into the weeds of whether whether or not there's an implication in terms of U.S. markets. And I think if you kind of watched how today traded and so forth, you could see that the market really, I don't want to say was not impacted by this, but there are just other areas that it's not the only story that's going on in the markets, right? And it's not, even though that story dominated over the weekend, and as the banks have and they should over the last couple of weeks, it doesn't mean that the impact is going to be felt, and that there's going to be a market crash. Remember, the same people always are talking about market crashes. Like, it doesn't matter, right, if they're right or they're wrong. They get clicks and so on and so forth, and the more fear that they can incite, the more clicks and the more retweets they're going to get. So you kind of have to shelter yourself away from that. And I myself, I watched a little bit of like where futures opened last night, but I was over at my sister's house for dinner. We had a great time, and sure, I glanced at what futures were doing, but I mean, to me, there's better things to be doing on your weekend than stressing about all of that. So I wanted to kind of talk about that for a minute. Of course, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendation. So what was kind of interesting today was that, when I put together my watch list, of course, I'm looking at, relative strength areas and names that are maybe pulling back into support, and, names that could be potential leaders for the week. But I kind of, we're watching what was happening and what was moving in the pre-market. And as we went over in the pre-market session that we do every day at TTG, which again, you can access if you want to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group, you can go to tribecatradegroup.com right here, services, and sign up right on my profile link on Twitter to be a member, because we really try to come out with, I try to come out with some insightful areas to focus on, basically every morning pre-market as we go through the day's setups and events. But I thought today could be more of a value day, just because so many of these areas I was looking through. A lot of areas like the industrials, for example, which have really gotten beaten up over the last couple of weeks. I know that the main focus is on the banks, and I'll talk about the banks in a minute. But also it just felt like so much of what was a leader, a couple of weeks ago, like for example, like a United Rentals, which was up 2.2%, it was 2.3%. Thinkorswim is not cooperating here with bringing up the chart, but it had a nice bounce after a big pullback. Let's see if I can bring it up here on the 1 hour chart, right? I mean, this name went from 475 basically in a straight line all the way down to 370. I mean, that's a huge move, right? It has nothing to do with really the banking situation. All right, maybe there's some type of indirect move here, but Caterpillar, which that was a name that we talked about in the pre-market session. Now, I didn't get a hold of this one because by the time I saw it was already up about 2%, and I didn't want to chase it. But again, these things, some of these things, they should bounce, right? A market doesn't go straight down, doesn't go straight up either. In a straight line, they do kind of bounce a little bit. Now, I don't know if this is going to continue to recover, but it's something you can kind of pick some of your favorites, right? ATKR is another one that I would like to see it get back above the 50-day moving average, right? This filled its earnings gap and kind of settled in here. right? So that's again, I didn't trade this one. What I did trade was STLD, right? STLD has been one of my favorite steel names. Again, that's another group besides the industrial names that really took a harsh beating. After acting so well, there was like a mad rush out of some of these groups. This is a stock that was at 136, went all the way down to basically 100. So I played this for a nice trade today. Ahead of the Fed. I personally, I don't want to be adding a lot of risk ahead of the Fed. So, I've been taking what I've been kind of preaching, which I think that there's more day trading opportunities, right, with this market going back and forth, especially what we saw, over the last 2 weeks. So that's where I thought that there was some strength. I was talking about Exxon earlier too, and I was on with Joel from Benzinga, talking about this at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, these things gave a little bit of a trade opportunity. Again, like all of this fell off everybody's radar, I think, for the last 2 weeks because they've been so weak. But they got a nice rebound today. So, going back to, and like I said, I'll talk about the banks now, but this little bit of a relief. It just felt like these areas were due for a day to recover with the banks up this morning. Small caps were up 1.3% as well. Remember that the banks are the largest weight in the small caps, but so meaning that we've got the Fed meeting not tomorrow, but Wednesday at 2:00 and the press conference thereafter. The regional banks did eke out a gain today. I think that they were up like 4%, but they gave it back. So this still looks like a very wobbly area right now. FRC is getting the attention. This did make new lows. It was down 47%. So this situation with the banks is not over, right? With the regional banks, this is going to continue, right? And this name may need to be bailed out or bought. I don't know, but this name is now down, made a new low for the day at $12. So that doesn't look good. And we'll see how this develops. And we'll see if the banks, being only up 1% today, it is still very much a problem area. And I've talked about this multiple times, that this market and the banks are a confidence game. So it takes time for this to heal. I would watch this 43 level in the banks. And if they go lower, you could maybe look at this as I don't want to say a positive, but with the Fed meeting, Powell's going to get peppered with questions in his Q&A about the banking situation. So, so what do they do, in terms of Wednesday, right? Which I think everybody's going to be watching. It's going to be an important Fed meeting. Fed fund futures are close to pricing in 25 basis points. Do I think that they could increase rates 25 basis points and then say basically they're in the wait and see zone, and probably done for the rest of the year in terms of hikes? That could be the result. Are they going to say that in the meeting? Probably not. I don't think Powell wants to back himself into a corner because he doesn't know what subsequent inflation reports are going to do. And I think he's got to reassure and try to bring some confidence, back into and say something positive about the banks or something that they're doing to kind of shore this situation up. Because again, it does not look good, when you're looking at FRC and carry. So this has to kind of heal itself. And again, that will take time. So in the meantime, what do we do with some trades? Well, we day trade them. Right. And that's why I didn't hold this STLD. Not to say that I can't keep bouncing, but I'm not looking for home runs in this market. I'm looking for a single, maybe a double here and there. This thing was up 3.6%. And, we caught that pretty decently today in the trading room. Let me just bring up another screen here. All right, so this is the trade that I put on, and again, I didn't stick in this too long, and taking profits on a trade 108, paid 104.67. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking at in this market. And then the other thing is to kind of another group that's been strong, of course, has been the semiconductors. Right, I saw a lot of stories this weekend about or posts that saying that, oh, Nvidia is a short. I don't know what people are really looking at, to be honest, because this is a nice defined trend. It's above the 5-period moving average. Could there be profit taking in this? Sure. And they do have an event tomorrow. If the event isn't great, it could be a buy the rumor, sell the news type thing. So I've taken profits, but I would urge people who are doing some type of like weird trend line thing, saying it's up at the upper trend line, make sure you zoom out a little bit, right? I think long term, and again, I'm not saying this happens tomorrow or the next week, but I think 300 is my upside price target. Now, I put out a bullish note on Nvidia last week, and I took my first target at 261, right, which is an extension away from the value area of March, right? But again, I like this sideways and then a move out of sideways. Like, there's so many people that as soon as something breaks out of consolidation, they want to fade it. That's not really the best trading strategy, in my opinion, right? I always want to go with the trend. Even though trend trading has been difficult in this market, I'm still going to go with the trend, right? Until you actually see a sell signal, right? So that's what I'm watching in this one. AMD also had a nice recovery, but AMD for me hit my upside target at $98, and I think that we see some consolidation right around this virgin point of control. Again, an area where a lot of buyers and sellers previously met up that we haven't revisited, right? They can often act as a place of consolidation or an area that could get faded. So that's something to keep in mind. Other names in the semis, again, which not exactly the value area. I'm sorry. I mentioned that more value areas than growth outperformed today, but the semis did quite well. ALGM almost made a new high today, right? That's kind of it. This is a little bit of a high level for this stock, but it has been going sideways, and I think looks pretty interesting. A couple other names in the semis, which again, I stick with what has been working, right? And it has been the semiconductors, but ON Semiconductor looks pretty good too, right? This has been kind of, consolidating. And again, I don't know why Thinkorswim is having this issue with bringing up charts for me today. Sometimes if you switch the time frame, so this is good to watch, to look at in any event, but I would watch this $80 level, right, in ON Semiconductor, right? That's the top of value for the week, right? And it needs to break out there, right? So it's almost there, but it's not. So again, something to watch for tomorrow, right? Apple's another name too, which I think is pretty interesting, right? I don't trade Apple that often, but I have to like this setup here, right? This is a pop over this recent range. So again, digestion, consolidation, whatever you want to call it, after a nice run up and now resolving higher. So I think 162 is somewhere where Apple could go to. Notice it's also above value for the week. And then also there's a virgin point of control up there at 167. So I think Apple looks pretty good for a trade. And again, they do have a lot of cash, right? They're one of these companies that, has a pretty big cash cushion. A couple other names that caught my attention for the day. ELF. Right, I know this has been a popular name. It has to break 75. I've got no position in this one, but we'll be watching to see if it can take that next leg higher after some consolidation and a little bit of a dip lower. Here is also how our weekend watch list is doing so far. Every weekend, I do provide a watch list with triggers based on them, based on a technical. They're not right at last price. They have to actually get above, a resistance level. So far, our watch list is doing okay. This SMCI, maybe the last one I'll cover in tonight's video, keep it short, did get back above the value area, and you could set your stop right around $95, which is the top of value for the month. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Again, keeping it short and sweet. Again, I didn't do any trading in the afternoon. I'm basically following the plan that I set up for members over the weekend, and what we talked about last week is to convert trades to profits and not be greedy in this market, considering what is going on with the banks. And I think that that group still needs to still needs to improve. The VIX, which we've been talking about as well, has been erratic, like all over the place. It's been going up one day, down another, so it's settled in at 24. Now I would like to see this continue to break lower. Right, that would add a little bit of confidence too, to see this, continue to kind of move lower as well. Guys, have a great night, and see you tomorrow.